In this video, we're going to discuss grammatical aspect. A grammatical aspect is a grammatical category of verbs that tell us how a verb's action extends over time. And there are two main aspects. There is a third one, but we're not going to get into that. These are the two main ones that will serve all of our purposes. There's the derivative aspect, and the aorist aspect. And in school, you may have heard the term continuous, and you may have heard the term simple. Continuous past, let's say, or the simple past. If you've heard of these and you understand what they mean, then just substitute continuous with derivative and simple with aorist, and it may help you to understand better what aspect is. I'm not going to use these terms, continuous and simple. I prefer derivative and aorist. So after this video, I won't be using these two terms again. Now, practically speaking, the aspect of a verb, aspect, gives us the stem of the verb. It gives us the stem of the verb, and we'll see this later when we actually get into the formation of verbs. But so that we understand what the derivative and aorist aspects are, if we draw a time graph, let's pretend that this is a straight line. So this is time. The derivative aspect tells us that an action has not yet finished. So let's say an action starts at some point in time. We know if the verb is in the derivative aspect, we know that it is still going on when the verb manifests itself in the sentence. We know that there's no indication that there's an end of the action because the stem is the derivative stem. The aorist stem, on the other hand, doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't give us any details like the derivative stem does. The derivative stem tells us that the action has not yet finished. The aorist stem doesn't tell us anything. It's just, I guess that's why they're just simple. It just simply the action has taken place or is taking place. There's nothing to do with completion. It doesn't tell us anything about the completion of the verb, of the action. The word aorist comes from the Greek word aoristos. Aoristos. And aoristos means without without boundaries or without limits. Without limits. Aoristos means without limits. Something that has no limits is limitless and it can't be contained, so it's uncontainable. Something similarly that is grammatically limitless can't be defined. And if we can't define it, then that means we don't have any information about it, any details. So if we don't have any information about it or any details about it, then it is simply simple. This is not a really good explanation. It's hard to discuss something so abstract when we're trying to talk about something that's very practical. So if you find that this is really confusing to understand, don't worry. We're going to see many examples of the aorist. And it will be clear what it does and how it works at that time. So just to sum this up so that we can move on to something more concrete, the aspect is a verbal category, is a grammatical category of a verb, is a grammatical category of a verb that tells us how a verb's action extends over time. There are two aspects that we're going to discuss, the derivative and the aorist. The derivative aspect says that a verb has begun at some point in time and that it is continuously going without any evidence that it has stopped or will stop. The aorist aspect is the undefined or limitless aspect that doesn't tell us anything about how it extends over time, how the action of the verb extends over time. It just happens, or it just happened. It's simple. That's probably why they named it simple. So we will take this knowledge of aspects and move on to tenses in the next video, and you'll see how this works.